Donk Nation, Jackson, Janet's greetings and welcome to your Daily Dose of Donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, bringing you some nonsensical Steelers talk. We got Gingy back in the house. We have to round out some more lists this week, Gingy. We're going to do cornerbacks for everybody who's clear. And maybe there's some Steelers news going on. Maybe there's not. At least, Gingy, I get to be happy this week because I do not have to watch Russell Wilson and his damn cheesy pickup lines. Excuse me, his cheesy go get 'em mottos in black and gold anymore. He can go join Justin Fields in New York because apparently they like our leftovers that can't get the job done. But Gingy, how you doing on this nonsensical Friday?
Mutant Gingy in the house. It's pretty nonsensical. Yeah, I hear you about Russell Wilson, right? Just to differentiate, want to make sure that everyone knows he went to the New York Giants and not the Jets, but yes, all quarterbacks hanging out there in New York.
Is there a difference at this point which New York team you go to? Because they both just kind of suck.
I don't know. What he ended up getting, Donkey? What was it? Like
10 and a
million
half
guaranteed?
10 and a half guaranteed, I think it was. 21 million possible. Hopefully he earns all those incentives. Because if he earns all those incentives, baby, we're looking at like a 4th round draft pick. So here's the hoping.
Yeah, best of luck to him. Probably, I don't know. What do you think? How do you compare his situation now versus his situation in Pittsburgh? Is he in a better place?
It's a lot worse because Brian Daboll is actually coaching for his job. So if he doesn't look like the better quarterback, he's not guaranteed to be the starter like he was in Pittsburgh. When he signed day one in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, the man of Tomlin's words, guaranteed him that starting job. So he knew he was a starter. Going to New York, there's no guarantee he's the starter. From my understanding is it's him and Winston right now as co-favorites. But a lot of people are saying, hey, the Giants still might draft a quarterback. And a lot of people are saying, hey, don't sit on Tommy DeVito winning that job either. And honestly, watching all 3 of those guys play last year, I wouldn't put my money on any of them. So who knows, dude? But I feel Russ ended up in a really bad spot. And I find it funny that Myles Garrett was trying to woo him into Cleveland. And he didn't want to go. He thought it'd be easier to take on Jameis Winston than Kenny Pickett for what it's worth. I honestly wanted to see him go to Cleveland so we could finally see the Pickett versus Russ battle that we were hoping for in Pittsburgh. But I don't know. Does that mean Cleveland just showed their hands with the first draft pick that they're going to go quarterback?
I don't know. I think that's definitely possible. How about Steelers going quarterback? I've heard a lot about that guy from Alabama in the news this week.
Gingy, we have talked about me loving Jalen Milroe, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the dude from Alabama. Jesus Christ, man. He's a 3rd-round draft pick. Do not spend a 1st-rounder on Jalen Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe. I think he's the quarterback we should draft. I do not think you should draft him in the 1st round. And since we don't have a 2nd-round pick, that leaves the 3rd round, right? You do not make the Kenny Pickett mistake. And I'm not trying to be mean to Kenny here. Don't overdraft a guy who's a 2nd or 3rd round talent just because they play quarterback, okay? Draft for the round you're in. Let those guys slip. And those more one-skill quarterbacks is what I'll call them. The not 1st-round quarterbacks are the one-skill quarterbacks. I'm looking at Jackson Dart. I'm looking at Jalen Milroe. And probably the best of them is Shedeur Sanders. He's the guy I have an early 2nd-round grade on in terms of quarterbacks. Do not spend a 1st-round pick on one of those guys.
Yeah, let's hope not, Donkey. I don't know where we go in the 1st round then. Maybe back to offensive line. Dare. I know how you feel about running backs.
Best player available. It looks like defensive line is going to be the most likely to be available there with, 15 to 20 type of grade player falling. I would look there, but I'm going to tell you right now, watch out for one of these cornerbacks who is supposed to be picked a little earlier to fall, and look for that to be the pick. What I really want to see is one of those corners who are sitting in that 12 to 17 range, I want to see one of them fall and that be the Steelers pick. Because honestly, we need a number one corner. I think Joey Porter Jr. can be a very good number two. I don't think he quite has the foot speed to keep up with the super elite number ones that we seem to be getting a lot of in our division. I really would like to see corner, defensive end, or an offensive lineman, preferably a tackle, because you're not going to sell me that Broderick Jones is going to improve or Troy Fontana is going to stay fully healthy. And there's no depth there. So, yeah, those would be the three spots I would look, Gingy.
I believe it.
And
Still going back to defense, though, right? We talk all the offense all the time. We need this, we need that. Is there going to be an upgrade at tight end available at 20? 21? Excuse me?
No, Okay, so people love this kid from Penn State, right? This new kid who allegedly is like the best tight end out there this year's draft. Dude, put on his college tape and tell me he's not just the next Pat Freiermuth, who was the next, why can't I think of Mike Gesicki, right? This dude is just your prototypical Penn State tight end, which is going to be, and there's nothing wrong with this, and there's nothing wrong with drafting this. He's going to be that typical somewhere between 10th best to 25th best tight end in the league, right? The problem is we already have that, and we're already paying that. You don't draft that when you already have it, right?
Yeah, you're paying it. That's right.
So
in the draft, I feel like in the first round, you want to pick a player that, for better or worse, you really feel like you could build around, right? Because that's how I think you really start a franchise in today's NFL. Is you get that
10-year starter. The 10-year starter,
when you get that on a rookie contract for 4 years where you can go all in. So pick a player that you normally have to pay a lot nowadays, right? That's a DN, that's a quarterback, that's
corners.
Yeah. Somebody
offensive tackles. Yeah, those are the premier positions.
You take a shot with one of those best available on the board, and you see if you can build around it. I feel like it's really tough to build around one of those guys on defense. We had one of those guys on defense. But we also had probably, I know statistically it didn't show at Donkey, but we were so one-dimensional that an elite playoff team could so scheme hard against us. Oh, those offenses were not good.
When you look at the way
you get an elite defense that can actually pull the weight that we're talking about needing to pull.
I don't think those exist. I'm going to be quite honest with you. And the reason is, look at all those playoff teams who had success. Every one of them spent at least half of their payroll on offense. Okay, I know we like to talk about Philly and how great that defense was, but to be honest, Philly played the whole playoffs without their best pass rusher. Don't forget, Brandon Graham was hurt almost the whole season in Philly. Okay? Yeah, those guys played amazing, but they didn't get any interceptions on the second end till like the Super Bowl. Like, they were not making huge plays in the second end, and of course we overpaid for Darius Slay coming from Philly. You look at what these teams spend money on, Gingy. They spend money on the offense. It's a different league than what the Steelers want to be a part of. And it just feels like the Steelers, again, this offseason, the money spent is mostly on defense outside of the huge contract, of course, and the trade to get DK Metcalf. But look at the other signings. Almost every dollar was spent on defense. The reason I have a hard time getting hyped is, one, we still don't have the quarterback solution unless Mason Rudolph really developed another step when he left for Tennessee, because at the end of his time in Pittsburgh, he was a back-end starter, I would say. But I'd say last year in Tennessee, it looked like he took a step backwards in terms of play, but that offensive line there was terrible. Ours might be as well. And we've lost some key pieces, a Najee Harris type of guy, right? And they haven't been replaced on offense. So while I feel we might be better equipped, they're still not spending money where I think it needs to be spent. I think they're stuck into this bold way of trying to prove to people it can be done. But more importantly, I think Mike Tomlin knows, and I think Omar Khan's okay with this because it's what Art wants them to do. I think they're more stuck in just trying to win 9 football games, Gingy. I don't think they're trying to compete for Super Bowls. I feel like they're just trying to have 9-win seasons, and the best way to do that is spend money where no one else does because you'll get the better players, right? You can have the best defensive players and the best backup linebackers and bring in the best defensive player if you're willing to spend the money. No one was going to pay what we paid for Patrick Queen. So now what you have is an overpriced defense because we spend the most in defense in the league, but it's really only the seventh best defense in the league. And I don't think anyone can argue that. But by having the seventh best defense in the league, you're guaranteed to win 8-9 games. Does that mean you're going to compete in the playoffs? Hell no. You need to be like the best defense in the league if you have no offense. But I don't think they care about competing in the playoffs, Gingy. I really don't.
Major problem there.
I don't try. I'm not trying to be negative, but explain to me in a league, and you know this as well as I do. This league is driven by offense. Almost every Super Bowl team has at least a competent offense, if not an explosive offense. I mean, you could say what you want about Philly, but come on, dude. Tell me that 2,000-yard running backs come every week. No, dude, that offense was amazingly explosive on the running side, okay? Explain to me where the Steelers have ever tried to improve this offense to where it can become a unit that can lead this team. They just don't. And it's hard to watch year in, year out, them just play like it's 2000, like it's 1995. This is 2020 or 2025, whatever year you want to go into, right? This is offense. This is quarterbacks. This is, if not quarterbacks, great offensive lines with great running backs. The Steelers have zero of those check boxes every other playoff team has on offense. Zero of them. Now, maybe we're almost to a checkbox, but DK Metcalf or George Pickens, one of them needs to step up and become a true number one receiver, just not a 1B. And maybe we do have a checkbox. We'll put some positive in to end this, Gingy, on my offensive take.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think we tried to land it with Najee Harris, and he was just a sliver off, right?
Never draft a running back who won't run the 40.
But again, it's still a guy top 10 running back in the league consistent. Yes?
Hold on. We have to
Top 10?
justify we have to justify what we're using metric wise to rate running backs here. Are you just using yards or are you using efficiency? Because Najee Harris has never been a top 30 running back in terms of efficiency. Never.
I'm talking about the part that we're asking a running back to play within this team, which is, I think,
then I would say
a dynamic player, right? We had one before that could catch and run. He wanted a lot of money too, Le'Veon Bell, right? When we ask these running backs to operate in that system this way, right, then it is extremely difficult to, ask a guy to do that and not have him be a superstar. I feel like the running back position is like the center of the offense, really, when you don't have a guy that can chuck it 65 yards on a dive.
I fully hear you, and this is the only counterpart I have to Najee. I think he was a good soldier. I think what he did was fine. He was overdrafted. Fine,
and that was the point that I was going to get to.
I think he was overdrafted. No,
good enough.
I will not go top 10. I'll put him in that 20 to 30 range in terms of running backs. Just because right off the bat, the names I can rattle that I would put above him, and these are just without thinking. Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, the guy from San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey. Let's keep going. The guy from Minnesota when he was, or not Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. The guy from Minnesota, Jones. You keep going down there. I can rattle off, that's just off the top of my head, 5 running backs that are better than him. And that's not even counting into his horrible production numbers. And this is where it kills me, Gingy. If he was like an elite short yardage running back, different conversation. Najee Harris, as a guy with no explosive ability, was one of the least efficient running backs when it came to carries that needed 2 yards or less in terms of converting. You can't be a big running back, not convert short yardage, and be a top 10 back. I'm sorry, you just can't.
I hear your point. It's definitely understandable. And yeah, there are probably 10 guys that yeah, I understand it, Donkey. I do.
Hell, the dude from Atlanta, the dude from Washington,
Yeah,
Joe
guy
Mixon
from the
in
Colts.
Houston. Joe Mixon in
Yeah.
Houston. That guy from the Colts. That's what I mean.
Taylor.
You just go through.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Kamara, A-Chain, probably Connor at this point. Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I hear you.
I would not say Kamara at this part of his career because after year 5, dude, Alvin Kamara's legs are just dead. But if we're going like vintage Alvin Kamara, dude, I'd argue he was the best running back in the league that 3-year span he had. Dude could catch the ball, dude could run the ball. And who the heck was the big guy they had with him, too? Another Georgia running back, wasn't it? They had a big guy that just took all the carries and let him be really explosive down there. Don't know why that name is slipping me. But I don't hate Najee Harris for everyone. And I've said this before. He was overdrafted. He never should have been a first-round pick. That shouldn't have been held against him as hard as I have. I'll admit that. But the dude just... He was never anything other than a jag, as I like to call him. He's just a guy. But I will say this. Najee had one elite skill, Gingy, and maybe it deserves more recognition than I give it, but he had the elite availability skill, man. That dude was always there, never hurt. That is the one plus
durable
skill he had. Yeah.
And so maybe back, that's kind of rare.
Yeah, especially a guy who gets the ball 20 times a game. That's like... The example that I always use, and the reason I can't put Najee up there is David Montgomery's a better running back than Najee Harris. David Montgomery only plays 14 games a year. That's like the closest example I can get to. Also, David Montgomery is somehow more explosive than Najee Harris, but that's neither here nor there.
He's really missing that explosive piece.
Mm-hmm. I'm very curious to see what he can do with the Chargers. Who knows what's going to go on there, but... I'll tell you right now, Najee Harris could have had a fantastic career, and people would have loved him in Pittsburgh if Steelers just built the team properly, which is through the trenches. Najee Harris is that guy who needs a great offensive line to look good. When he has a bad offensive line, at best, he's average. We've seen him play with decent offensive lines, and he's had decent seasons. He essentially is what your offensive line gives you because he doesn't have the vision, the speed, or explosiveness to make it on his own. He needs help around him. Nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of those running backs. I really look for the Steelers to replace him with an equal-level talent, possibly third round, a guy like Cam Skattebo, possibly fourth or fifth round with a guy like Ollie Gordon. Both of them ran slower times. I mean, Ollie Gordon was a 4.6. I think Skattebo ran a 4.57. So you're talking dudes with non-explosive speed. My biggest fear right now, Gingy, since we're talking the draft, is if they draft A'Shawn Genty in the first frickin' round, I'm going to lose my mind because he's another dude who was a highly productive college running back who refused to run the 40. I can't trust that he's explosive enough if he doesn't run the 40, man. I need to see that time because you have to have Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara speed, Jahmyr Gibbs speed to be explosive as a running back in the NFL, or it just doesn't work. You're going to be limited to like a David Montgomery, a Najee Harris type of tier, a James Conner type of tier. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is those guys are all third round or later running backs for a reason.
I agree, Donkey. It's going to be hard to find a guy, and again, we have to build around other pieces. That's why I think that we just need to draft well at offensive line. I really hope we're able to cash in on the guys that we've already spent capital on in that area this year.
We've already talked about this, Gingy. I think you have to double, maybe triple dip on defensive line this year. You for sure have to add 1 or 2 offensive linemen this year. That's 5 draft picks. I wouldn't mind if a corner slips. I wouldn't mind taking a corner. Or if a wide receiver who you think is the bomb is there, you take him. And a quarterback slid in there somewhere. Outside of that, I don't think you waste draft picks anywhere else. I think you have to build this team. I think you might. I personally might. Maybe you embrace Mason Rudolph, see what happens. And if he has a crappy season, here's the good thing. you're going to have so many draft picks next year due to the players we lost this year, and people like Justin Fields getting $20 million, or heaven forbid, people like Dan Moore Jr. getting $20 million. We're going to have a bunch of compensatory picks. If we hit well in this draft on the offensive defensive line, we can add some skill players in there, much like Detroit did with like Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, picks like that. If we get a quarterback in next year's draft, or a free agent comes and might want to get here, or you trade for a guy like maybe Trevor Lawrence has another bad year and Jacksonville's willing to move on, you trade for a guy, set him up with tools, you can make a Jared Goff type of run with the Steelers team. My biggest fear is they're not actually trying to rebuild. They're going to draft to try and be effective this year, and that's what leads to Najee Harris draft picks. Last year, again, they're trying to be effective, so they go out and they draft luxury positions like Najee Harris, like Pat Freiermuth, and those guys just can't bring you over the hump when your lines suck. And outside of Cam Hayward right now, our defensive line's pretty bad, and our offensive line, Frazier was the only guy who was above average last year, and I don't have faith in a lot of these guys. The Steelers draft recently, because dude, it hasn't worked. They need to commit one way, and maybe Aaron Rodgers is the answer, Gingy. This is the last thing I want to talk about. Is Aaron Rodgers coming to Pittsburgh? And more importantly, with every other team seemingly off the block, should Pittsburgh now play hardball and lower the money it offered Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, I think that sounds like a good idea, actually, to be honest with you. I think that we could. I don't know how much Aaron Rodgers is going to outperform Mason Rudolph at the end of the day.
Me neither, but entertainment-wise, it's like 0 versus 100, to be fair.
Mason Rudolph is as entertaining as you make him, Donkey.
Only when he plays Myles Garrett, because I just want to see if a helmet gets ripped off again, okay?
Oh, come on, Donkey. We don't have to talk about that, do we?
You know, Myles Garrett talked about being a gentleman and not trying to hurt people on the field, because you don't do that stuff. You know, the Myles Garrett who ripped off Mason Rudolph's helmet and tried to hit him with it. That guy, you know, I kind of want to see that. And honestly, I want to see him get near Mason Rudolph with Broderick Jones on the field, dude, because Broderick Jones is going to suplex that mother lover, and I'm going to love it.
He might. Broderick Jones is a bear out there.
Dude,
that is one thing I really like about him. He's
Broderick
a soldier.
Jones is going to absolutely suplex him, and then Zach Frazier with his wrestling background is going to go in there and give him the old Sean Mayhem thumb, if you know what I'm talking about, Gingy.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Little bottom of the pile oil check is what we'll say is going to happen there.
Lots of bottom of the pile stuff, Donkey, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if the Steelers, if ultimately this system is ever going to end up producing anything. I don't know. You know what I mean?
It really hasn't in a decade.
And a system change is a completely whole different discussion. And so I'm not going to lie, there'll be talk throughout till draft time, right? This is going to start ramping up on quarterbacks. Is there anyone in this draft worth making a move up for?
Trade at the start of the 3rd round to get Jalen Milroe.
Donkey. I'm talking about a real earthshaker here.
You mean a 1st round move up? No.
Yeah.
No. I love Cam Ward, dude, but Cam Ward is essentially, I can't think of the little dude from Arizona's name. Kyler Murray. Cam Ward is essentially Kyler Murray. There's nothing wrong with that, but no thank you. I loved Cam Ward when he was a quarterback in Washington State. Got to watch a lot of those games. He played pretty good in Miami. Just little guy quarterbacks make me nervous. Taking them in the 1st round makes me even more nervous. Especially where you're going to have to, because to get Cam Ward, you have to probably trade into the top 5. If you're lucky, the top 3 is more realistic. Gingy, one last thing before we get to the list of corners here. The Steelers said they're going to turn over, they're going to change the way they do things. Head coach, GM, both coordinators, 80% of the coaching staff the same. Is it possible to change what you do without changing the people who do what you do?
Nope.
Okay, just wanted to get your take on that. Let's talk
Simple take.
Steelers
Nope.
corners. Gingy, this is one of the weird spots that defensively the Steelers are the defense, man. But when I started looking at it, man, there are a lot more like safeties you've heard of and core and the core pass rushers. Corners are kind of a forgotten spot in Steeler history. There's a few who clearly are going to make the list, so I'm not going to name them. But then you got the fifth spot for me is where it gets kind of unique. Do you talk about old school guys like Dwayne Woodruff, who was through all the bad years, got drafted late in the 70s and went through like all the bad years of the 80s? Do you talk about guys like JT Thomas, uh, who was a first round pick in 73 and was there through Super Bowl runs, right? Do you talk about Deshae Townsend, a guy from our era who was a pretty solid corner? Nothing special, but, borderline Pro Bowler a couple times. How about a Dwayne Washington, free agent? I think he's a free agent edition, might have been a trade edition. Early draft pick of the Vikings came over, had a great run with the Steelers. A later pick, like a guy who only had a couple years, like Joe Hayden. But if you talk him, does that bring in guys like Joey Porter Jr.? Does that bring in Mike Hilton? Where do you really go with these bottom corners for that number 5 spot? Who should be the guy you talk about? And for me, it's a guy who earned a nickname because he was always making plays, was the best slot corner I saw in terms of coverage the Steelers ever have. And it's when slot corners were just starting to gain popularity. That's big play Willie Gay, man. He also played the outside a little bit for us. But for me, at number 5, I name all those names. Big play Willie Gay is the guy who comes into mind.
I agree, Donkey. I like that at number 5. Big play for sure. Definitely some memorable plays. Big pick 6 with some really memorable dance moves.
I'll tell you, the other guy who I didn't say in there that got close to me is Brian McFadden, because he was just a solid one through. Trade back, and we get that other Super Bowl ring after trading back to him. That was cool. For me, number 4 comes to a guy who has one of my worst Steeler memories, was all his fault. And a guy who arguably, if he learned how to catch the football, could have been Hall of Fame material. Ike Taylor comes in at number 4 for me, for Gingy, for the Steelers corners. Great cover guy, hard to get away from, sticky as glue. Just couldn't catch the football. Like, he probably could have used some glue on his hands. But great coverage guy, longevity in Steelers' career. But, dude, Demetrius Thomas torching him from a pass from Tim Tebow is, like, etched in my freaking head, dude.
That's a hard one, Donkey. That's a tough pill to swallow there. But yeah, I don't disagree. Had some great memories. Great lockdown corner. Really emphasized for me when I think about Ike Taylor, the physical nature that defense used to be in Pittsburgh, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a dude that had 14 interceptions in his 13 years as a Steeler, so clearly not a catcher of the football.
No, and I stone hands many times. Right, but sure tackler in the open field.
So this is an old school throwback I got to put in there because the numbers are they're worth it. Jack Butler, he's the guy who played in the 50s. He somehow was an undrafted free agent, even though there was 30 rounds in the frickin' draft back then. This dude was an undrafted free agent. Goes on to make a pretty good career. I mean, he gets up to 25 interceptions in his career. I believe he was a first team All Pro 3 times. But I think those were his later years as a safety. He's a guy, though, that was more known as a corner than a safety, so I have to put him here. Carnell Lake didn't get talked about, for anyone who's curious here, when you're like, well, Jack Butler was the hybrid. Because Carnell Lake was viewed more as a safety looking back at the things. I understand he played some corner, was a kind of a hybrid guy. But for me, classic dude, big numbers, longevity. Jack Butler comes in at number 3. Let's give the old school a little love.
For sure, Donkey. I'll back you on that one. I don't think that any of this for me. I'm not super I'm not super passionate either way about this, but we're talking about when I think of Steelers corners, I think of what? What am I going to talk about when it's nonsensical? Splash plays, doggy.
Splash, without
Where
a
are the
doubt.
splash
Yeah.
play guys at, right? We're talking about
That's why I
big
thought
picks
you'd
and
like
big
Big
moments.
Play Willie Gay. I thought you'd like him in
That's,
there.
of course, like I said, those are etched, right? Because those are game changers.
If Mike Hilton was here a little longer, I'm sure he'd have been in Gingy's list just for all the big sacks he came up and got.
Boy,
Little special on that.
I wish we could have brought him back because he wasn't the same guy outside of the system.
No, he played good, though, in Cincy. All right, so now we get to the top two, and this is going to be the debate. Both of them are more classical guys, right? But, Gingy, I've always told you, I have a special place for people who change the way the game is played. So that's going to headline who my number one is. But my number two, man, I didn't really get to see much of him. I remember a little bit of his career. But the dude is nicknamed Hot Rod for a reason, because Rod Woodson, dude, he was the splash play connoisseur, albeit maybe more as a return man than a corner. But
so fast.
Splash play connoisseur, Hot Rod Woodson, has to be in the top two. I'm not going to argue with people who want to put him number one, because the dude was amazing. What was he, a 10th overall draft pick in the 80s? Played for the Steelers till what, like 95, 96, somewhere in there. Just an absolute monster. And third in terms of Steelers interceptions in history as corners. Jack Butler actually had 52 overall as a Steeler, some as a safety. Hot Rod comes in with 38 interceptions for the Steelers. You gotta love it. I mean, puts him just above Dwayne Woodruff, who had 37 and played for forever. It felt puts him well above Deshae Townsend and Dwayne Washington, who both come in around 20. Man, Hot Rod was something special. Did not have the longevity of the number one guy that we're going to talk about. Didn't change the game the way the number one guy did. But man, you tell me, what was the better era of corners than having Hot Rod Woodson and Showtime? Or Primetime Showtime. Come on, donkey. Primetime Dion out there, man. Those two guys were something special in the game of football.
They said just pure speed athletes, and that was really the last type of corner that's a change the game corner, right? The offense has to avoid that person. I don't remember the last time we had a change the game corner. We've had some change the game safety since then, for sure, but not change game corners since Hot Rod.
No, because the guys who could catch the football, Deshae Townsend, weren't the greatest coverers. And the guys who are the great coverers, Ike Taylor, Joey Porter Jr., can't catch the football. So, put you where you are. But that leads me, Gingy.
Donkey.
I don't know how you feel. We'll ask you how you have these two guys rated. But for me, Mel Blount is the guy. Hall of Famer, just like Hot Rod. Hall of Famer. Interception leader for corners out there at 57 for the Steelers. Can't play cornerback the way he plays cornerback because he just made people's lives miserable. Clotheslines, holding, all the hands in your face, never letting you get an inch. That dude, you think Steelers football, you think back to those steel curtain teams, you think to Mean Joe Green, Mel Blount, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, right? You think the just generation of dominant players who didn't let you get an inch. And without a doubt, the dude who always seems to be rocking a cowboy hat out there, man, he was the sheriff of the back end for the Steelers on those teams. I know that doesn't seem right saying on a corner, but he would just shut down anyone who was put up against him, Gingy.
Absolutely no question, donkey. Prototypical Steeler corner. Big, physical, in your face, shut you down. Like you said, Hall of Famer, all the credentials. Change the game. Awesome name. He's the whole deal. I think he got listed he got an honorable mention at least in the awesome name.
Probably, yeah.
Yes.
Should have. If he didn't, it's purely just an oversight because I had way too many damn names on my list of paper. I probably missed a couple.
Check the tape. Check the
But
tape.
yeah, it was. I don't know, Jen. Did you like him at 1?
I do. Like I said, prototypical Steeler corner, Hall of Famer. Awesome.
Next week, Gingy, list has to come. It's going to be safeties, and I have a weird feeling there is going to be a lot of flowing hair.
I mean,
and my
how
personal,
are you not going to go that way?
My personal all-time favorite Steeler safety, Lethal Lee Flowers, unfortunately, probably will not make the list. So I'm gonna say his name now before I get too sad about it.
What?
I loved me Lethal Lee back in those
him.
days. But there are some corners on this team, Gingy, and I just, let's bring it a little relevant to the modern team. I don't think Slay will be here long enough, but do you foresee, I don't know, Beanie Bishop maybe? He had a little bit of splash in his rookie year, 2 or 3 interceptions. Joey Porter Jr. Do you see a chance for either of these guys to make it up to that spot and maybe dethrone at least Willie Gay from the 5 slot?
Porter Jr. has the opportunity to, right?
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt.
I believe so.
Without a doubt, as long as they keep him here long enough. I mean, skill set wise, he is pretty solid if he can just learn to stop grabbing everybody who comes by him, thinking he's Mel Blunt.
But there is
a
different, in my opinion, there's a higher threshold for cornerbacks that is kind of difficult to maintain nowadays. Can you get a guy to that level, right?
I think you can if they're the right guy, like Sauce Gardner, right? He's a guy who definitely, as long as he plays, will make those types of lists. That dude down there in Dallas who gets like 7 interceptions a year, right? There are those guys. I think it's a little harder now with the way the league is, but you just have to be that guy who's willing to go get the football. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to see us keep I didn't like the trade because I felt we were overpaying Donta Jackson, right? And I said that before. But man, at $7.5 million a year, Donta Jackson had 5 interceptions for us? Dude, I would have loved to see him stay. He stays for just 5 years having that productivity. He's 6th all time in the Steelers list of interceptions? There are those guys who just seem to find the football. I think we let one go. And I will say this, Gingy, if Joey Porter Jr. can't add interceptions to the list, I don't know how far he can go because this era with how pass heavy it is, I don't think you can get away being an all-time great if you're Ike Taylor, right?
Not at all. Not in today's NFL. That's what I was alluding to, Donkey. Is it even possible for a single cornerback to get to that notoriety of recognition without in today's NFL?
It certainly is. You have to be that guy who's out there making plays all the time, right? You have to be
it's completely shut down, right? You got to be so technically sound and so fast. You have to be able to basically know what the wide receiver is thinking before they do it, like infinite amounts of tape, as well as have the athletic ability to double time those moves. It's really difficult, I'd say.
I hear you, and I think you haven't seen very many guys like Darrelle Revis recently, but I don't know if that's the way the league is or just how it goes. But there are certain guys who I think are still that top tier guy. I don't think we've seen one in Pittsburgh in a while, and I guess what your argument could be is these quarterbacks play at such a high level. It's just so hard to get those interception numbers. I think those guys still exist. I do think they are harder to find. And maybe this isn't even the right way to go about it. Maybe it's just the way wide receivers are added now with the speed they have, that it's just harder for these guys to have longevity. Maybe that's what's missing, because you see a lot of these dudes who have 2, 3, 4 good years and then just fall off a cliff because they lost speed. Patrick Peterson's a great example. But There's still multi-time Pro Bowlers out there. The Steelers just added one who, if he played his whole career in Pittsburgh, I think he would be the third best corner in Steelers history. That's Darius Slay, right? Look at the career Darius Slay has had. Man, and he did it in this generation, so I do think it's able. I think the Steelers actually have one now, albeit at the end of his career. Had two, if you want to put Patrick Peterson in there, of those guys who everyone in the league knew their name. So, Gingy, I would say I do think it's possible. I do agree with you, it's hard. And I'll tell you right now, a renaissance of a great Blitzburg would make it easier.
Oh, don't get me excited like that. Saying words like Blitzburg. Holy smokes.
That's where we have to leave it. Gingy, I know you don't have a shout out. Do you have a closing thought, though?
Nah, we covered it pretty thoroughly this week, Donkey. We're going to see this ramp up to this draft time. We're going to see it's going to become much easier to be even more nonsensical as we approach draft time. This is going to make our job easy for us, all this QB talk. Aaron Rodgers, Shadir Sanders, Jackson Dart, Milrow. We're going to hear this for the next 4 weeks.
Mini Ben Roethlisberger from Ohio State. I still don't know his name.
Learn it.
That guy.
It'll be good.
All right. Well, I do have a shout out. I'm going to give a shout out because I watched a little bit of tape here to get ready for it, see which corners I thought was there. Watching Mel Blanc clothesline people and it be legal, dude. I have to give a shout out to that because that put a freaking smile on my face, dude. Oh, was I happy about it. But I'll let you know, I'm the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey at Twitch, at Twitter. Your daily dose of Donkey Ginger is where you get the nonsensical talk. Hopefully, Laskers will join us at some point in here. Hopefully, Bugboo will stop being crazy so I can get him on a little fun, nonsensical off-season episode. But Gingy, let the people know.
Mutant Gingy in the house. We're talking football. We're talking nonsensical. Who's going to be a quarterback at the Steelers? Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows.
Ben
Roethlisberger. If you got him.